And so he got me in the door at Rugrats. I pitched like 40 ideas, like a couple sentences each, and they didn't take any of them. They hated all of them. And make sure like you can't even have a character eat a grape in a kids' TV show because it's a choking hazard.
Oh, oh, that's interesting. That I didn't know about that.
At least Rugrats, the first job I had was it was half for adults too. They had all the adult storylines and you could do adult style jokes.
Yeah.
Not like sex jokes, but although there were a few we threw in.
Wait, what? Hello, everyone. This is Abhi, and right now I have with me Mr. Wonderful Scott, and he does not need introduction from anyone else, so he's gonna do it by himself. So please take it away.
All right. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Nice to be here. And Mr. Wonderful Scott, I like my title. I'll take that. That's my new name. Um, so yeah, I'm a writer. I've been writing for wow, almost 30 years now in television. I'm mostly in kids TV. I've been lucky enough to win an Emmy. I won an Emmy for Rugrats. Um, I also won a Writers Guild Award for a show called Imagination Movers for Disney. It's a live action show. So I've been at it quite a while. I've worked on a lot of great shows. I've been lucky enough to do that. Other shows I've worked on are Backyardigans, Curious George, Paw Patrol. I've done some stuff for Sesame Street. I've also done like older Cartoon Network type stuff. That's like Hi Hi Puffy on a Yumi. These are kind of obscure. Pet Alien, Johnny Test. So I've worked on a range of ages, from younger kids to older kids, mostly animated, but also some live action. Yeah, that's the basics about me.
Oh, that's pretty good basics, and I didn't know that you won an Emmy, and that's really great. And thank you very much for sharing that. And okay, so the first thing, how you got into it, was your original plan was to become a writer, and how did you get into this field, this niche field for writing for uh, kids television, basically, if I get it right.
Yep, that's it. Well, no, I wanted to be a paleontologist when I started out, study dinosaurs. When I was a kid, I knew I was going to be a paleontologist. But then I always wrote too. So I won essay contests in school. I won spelling bees. I've always been like a word nerd. So I always had like a talent for it. And then uh, in high school, I won like a medal for the arts. I was on the school newspaper. I also did like drawings for the school newspaper. So I drew back in the day too. Always been love the arts and been involved with them. And so when I went to college, I went to Arizona State University because I grew up in Phoenix. I started out in theater, um, and I did 1 year of that, but it was all just very depressing. It was all, plays about people getting buried alive and people on stage talking to 52 empty chairs. And I realized, no, this is too serious for me. So I switched them to broadcast journalism as a major. But what I really did in college was I did a sketch comedy club called The Far Side at Arizona State University. It still exists. It's been there like 40 years. David Spade was involved with it briefly back in the day.
Wow.
And we did like a Saturday Night Live show every week. We did it live at like 12:30 in the Student Union Center. And that's really where I cut my chops, like writing for live performance every week. You learn quickly what's funny and what's not because people either laugh or they don't. You die on stage or you don't. So that became, that was college for me, and those people I worked with are still some of my best friends to this day. So and after college, that gave me more of the writing bug, and I had spec scripts. I had like when I was still in college, I wrote a spec script for a company in New York. It was the literary agency, and they were doing their own sitcom. So it was like nothing major, and no one knew about them, but they liked one of my scripts so much that they recorded it. And so that was really encouraging to me, still in college, to have someone like record a sitcom of mine. And then my best one, actually, yeah, the best man at my wedding and one of my best friends in high school is in LA as a writer now too, a writer slash producer. We've had the same kind of career path, oddly enough. And he hooked me up with my first agent back when I was starting out. It was his agent too. a woman named Sue Giordano in upstate New York, and she's still around too, and she's great. So I was living in Phoenix. I had a literary agent in upstate New York. And nothing had happened really because I wasn't in LA yet. So, back in those days, there was no remote, you had to be in a room with everybody else. So it took me a couple years, but I moved to LA. And at that point, my agent's star client, a guy named Rick Gittleson, was a staff writer on Rugrats. Um, and so he got me in the door at Rugrats. I pitched like 40 ideas, like a couple sentences each, and they didn't take any of them. They hated all of them. Um, but the good news is they were like, "Oh, you tried really hard. We like your Moxie kids." So they gave me an episode idea of their own, and that became my first scripted television credit, was an episode of Rugrats. So and at the time I came out with sitcom specs. I came out to date myself. I had like a Frasier spec and a Seinfeld spec, and I really wanted to get into sitcoms. But it's just easier, and it still is easier to get into animated shows, mainly because they're not union for the most part. So you get paid good money, but you get paid about a third to a half less of what you would make doing a primetime sitcom. So, but they read those specs. The guys at Rugrats read my Seinfeld and my Frasier, and they're like, "We like this guy." So yeah, going into Rugrats, I thought I was like Angelica. I thought, this dumb baby show, like, I'd never seen it, and then I actually watched it. I'm like, oh, this is a really good show. So I am honored to have been a part of it now. So yeah, that was kind of my first in, was Rugrats.
Okay, okay, I will talk about the finances and salary later because that's a heavy subject. But what would be you if you can tell me about what would be the difference in writing for a sitcom and writing for a kids television show? And I keep saying it kids, but I believe a lot of adults love watching them too. I still love Looney Tunes, by the way, so I don't know. So yeah, so what was the difference? You'll be like, I can add some comedy that I cannot write in an assigned full episode because in yeah, mind is the limit for animation, if I guess.
Right. I love Looney Tunes too. I grew up on Looney Tunes. So yeah, it's still
Yeah.
Roadrunner versus Coyote is still my favorite cartoon of all time. Um, so I always say, and I honestly believe this, of course I would say this, that kids TV writing is even harder than writing for sitcoms, because you're very limited in the type of material you can write. Like, you can't use big words, you can't have any sexual innuendo at all. You can't show any violence. They have whole, it's called standards and practices, and educational consultants in kids television that review everything and make sure, like, you can't even have a character eat a grape in a kids TV show because it's a choking hazard.
Oh, oh, that's interesting. That I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's some very obscure things. There's a lot of limits, honestly, to the stories. You're right about the animation. Like, animation, you can animate anything. You can go to outer space, you can go to dinosaur world back in time. So that is great, although most shows have a budget that doesn't allow very much of that. Um, but that is the upside of animation. You can essentially anything you can imagine, you can see. But for kids TV in particular, preschool television, which is kids like ages 2 to 5 or so, there are some very strict rules that aren't like mandates, but everybody follows them, about safety. Um, you also don't want verbal jokes a lot, because kids, a lot of times, those 2-year-olds don't understand verbal humor. You have to have a visual joke, like old silent movies. So, and kids are also the toughest audience, because if they don't think something's funny, they won't laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
courtesy left for kids to like go away.
Exactly. Let's change the channel. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I always say, I love sitcoms, and I love, 2.5 Men. I was a fan of 2.5 Men, but that's essentially a show that's 30 minutes of insults and sexual jokes.
No. Yeah.
And so that just, and that's just kind of one level of writing. Whereas for a kid, you have to have humor, again, that is not sexual, that is non-verbal, is small words, but still is funny enough to make a 2-year-old laugh. So I feel like the standards in a lot of ways are a lot higher. They're just different, but yeah. So
Uh, so well, Okay, so my next question would be, what would be your process? You'll be like, you tap into your inner child, or is, well, right now you have a good chunk of experience, so I think you have a good knack for what to write and what not to write. But in the early process of yours, what was your process basically? Were you like, let's talk to my niece and tell her if that's funny or not, or what was it like basically?
Right. I just go to playgrounds and question kids a lot. No.
Oh,
I steal all my ideas. No,
okay, no, no, no.
no, no. Yeah, I mean, you do have to think like a kid to some degree. I've always come up with like sketch ideas, ever since I can remember, I've been writing down just like jokes and little sketches, like funny scenarios and stuff. Um, so that was nice. And a lot of the stuff, at least Rugrats, the first job I had was it was half for adults too, they had all the adult storylines and you could do adult style jokes.
Yeah.
Not like sex jokes, but although there were a few we threw in.
Wait, what?
I can't
What?
say anything else. No.
Okay, I have to start watching Rugrats again. Do you have a Wikipedia page?
I'm sure there are lots. Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Okay,
Oh,
I'm seeing that again.
but I just what I do when I brainstorm ideas for any show is I just sit down and it's really character based, honestly. Like there's a thing called a show Bible, which is usually at least 10 pages to sometimes like 50 pages of description about the show, like the characters in it, the locations, the tone, the type of humor they want to do, is there music. So it's really just a guide to the show. And from that, the best stories come from character. So uh that's really like in Rugrats, Tommy was the brave one, Chucky was the scaredy cat, and Phil and Lil were the gross ones. And so Um, in that one, it was a lot of like, how would a baby think? And I went to an aquarium. This was one of my episodes, and just in that kid's mindset, I was thinking, oh, it looks like I'm in something that's sunk underwater. Because you look out the windows and you're surrounded by water. Like
Yeah.
a kid would think I'm underwater. So and that became a show. I think they call it the Age of Aquarium, where the babies go to an aquarium and they think it's a sunken ship and they think they're underwater. So they have to like fix the ship and get it back above water. So
Yeah. But okay, okay. So in terms of apart from watching the kids show, thinking about the kids, and I didn't know there was a show Bible. So have you ever had an idea you be like, okay, this would be really funny, but it goes against what their character is. So do you go for it, or have you ever had those moments you be like, "Oh, this would be really funny, but I don't think they will my show Bible would not allow me to do it."
yeah, all the time.
Okay.
I think every writer would tell you, yeah, that happens like every day. Where you have a joke, you're like, oh, this would be so perfect, but it's not right for the show. Yeah. Um, so yeah, that happens a lot. And I know even sometimes writers on shows have written just like scripts they know will never air just to get it out of their system, with all the jokes they want to do and like a lost script. So yeah, that's a definite consideration. And also like it goes through a notes process, all scripts. So a lot of times writers will have favorite jokes. Like I know I do. Back when I was starting out, I could tell you my top 5 jokes in a script. So I was weird like that.
Okay.
But like a lot of times your favorite jokes won't survive the notes process because you have so many layers of notes, especially again in preschool TV. You have, your first note givers are your coworkers, like your boss, the showrunner or the producer, the people who also take part in the writing. And then it goes to and then it goes to the executives, and in preschool it goes to the educational consultants who and standards and practices. So um it's this is sadly the most disheartening part of the process is like it goes through so many people, like kind of any rough edges or any really sharp jokes kind of get worn down for the most part. Some do survive and you're like, yes, I can't believe that made it in. But that's just part of the process as it goes through a lot of changes. And I heard The Simpsons. I heard that they really didn't care about The Simpsons when it started airing on the Tracy Ullman show. Like no one was giving notes, like no one was overseeing it. And I really think that's why it succeeded so much, is because they just got to do whatever they wanted to do, whatever they thought was funny, which is what Chuck Jones did in the old Warner Brothers stuff too. Like they wrote for themselves, Bugs Bunny and Daffy and Coyote and Roadrunner. They really had not a lot of supervision, so and it worked for The Simpsons too. And I think even the breakout hits now, like Bluey, they don't fit any studio model. Like Bluey kind of broke the mold, but no one at the big studios was saying, let's involve the parents more, like they're saying the opposite at that point. So it's really, when you're given more freedom and less like input, a lot of times it can make a stronger show, but at the same time, it does help. It almost always helps the show you have to, but it's a trade-off. So
Yeah, but if you look at the extremes, if you look at like the Family Guy or the our South Parks, so they are known for pushing the boundary, but some of them get to in a let's just say controversial side of things. So I think that saves you from that too. But as you said, it's a heavily regulated script supervision that you deal with. And right now, do you think you have a knack for that? That I know this will be cut down in the middle, but okay, let me just write it. Or you just like, I know it's gonna go through all the way, so just I'll write that and save me some time.
yeah, I pretty much know what the worst offenders will be as first shows. Sometimes the writers are like, let's try it anyway, though. Like we literally have these conversations, like, yeah, this will never go, but let's try it anyway, just because it's so funny. And it's never anything dangerous or off colors. I can't think of an example, but it's just like things that are pushing the envelope a little bit. So yeah, I think everybody has a pretty good awareness that's been in it for a while of like what. And honestly, some studios are different than other studios. Some studios have a more strict review process. Like Apple has a pretty strict, very strict guidelines for preschool television. Um, and some other studios like Warner Brothers are a little more loose, like so even studio to studio, some of the things that they let happen vary, So um I I know some people who have such a strict theory of kids TV that they would say you can never cut from one scene to another because it confuses kids. Like,
Okay.
yeah, that's the far end of that theory. So a lot of times in those instances, they'll just move the camera. They'll literally show you moving from one place to the other, So there's this, it's all connected still. So, um, and these days I'll mention this too, like preschool television is becoming more and more tame, I want to say. I think we talked about this actually a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
I heard about this.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know that it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, but like the shows you and I fell in love with were not politically correct and we're not tame and we're fine, And,
Yeah.
but but a lot of times now, and maybe it's about, maybe with YouTube kind of branching off, there's more venues for kids. The tamer, gentler type of show is becoming more like the preschool standard, as opposed to more of a fun, wacky show. And I don't know, preschool kids that are two, maybe they don't care too much at the end of the day. But
Yeah, but I think they have this. It's funny you said there some studios don't let you cut from one scene to another, and if you see nowadays, people are just stuck on the screen and they just swiping up and left every 2 seconds. So I don't get what they're on about basically. And also, uh, right now we had like a good chunk of generation had Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, even though whatever the age they are. And then we other people will have other shows like my generation had. We still had Tom and Jerry and Looney Tunes, but right now I don't think we have any of those anymore. I don't know why. And it's
yeah,
some of the TV shows, I hate to say this, they just don't make sense at all. It's like they're written by a 4-year-old
right.
to be shown to a 2-year-old, and it's just I believe it leads to my next point. Like some of the time you put in some mature theme in those things, like for example your aquarium episode that you told. It's basically about survival, even though there was no real danger, right? uh So I'm not sure if I'm seeing this here right now, and some of the mature themes that you were able to pull through, and I didn't know how that get past to it. If I'm thinking about it right now.
Yeah, it's I work mostly in preschool TV now, so we very rarely deal with anything too serious. Although there's stories about loss, like occasionally there's hints about death or someone's gone, and it's a lot of emotional stuff, like feeling sad or isolated or different. We do that a lot and sharing. So but yeah, as far as the really deep stuff, like r- not, to go back 30 years again, sadly, but Rugrats was kind of famous for that because they did the Mother's Day episode, where we learned Chucky's mom died and all of that. And they took on religion. They took on, Hanukkah and Passover. So, and I know there are shows that do that now still too. There are shows that do like religious themed episodes from various denominations, and shows with serious topics. I also think part of the problem today is it's so fragmented. There's so many different shows and different ways to view them. And more kids are just watching stuff on YouTube to begin with. That's all they'll watch. So I think this stuff is probably out there still, but it's hard to find a show like you were just saying that really is the show, that touches that everybody loves. And Bluey is the closest I can think of currently. Like Bluey was a real breakout, but after Rugrats, it was SpongeBob. After SpongeBob, I feel like Phineas and Ferb probably
Yes.
filled that. And then after Phineas and Ferb, I don't really know. Like everything started fragmenting so much, so it's really hard to get a mega worldwide hit show again. I feel like.
Yes, yes. Phineas and Ferb was really nice. And it was literally like, even though the main story was not about Phineas and Ferb, it was the other ones, but it was like they threw everything that can at them. Like the Doofenshmirtz backstory just gets crazier every episode. Like he was raised by the wolves. His mother was not there when he was born and everything. His best friend was a balloon, but it was a good show. It was a show about the creativity and not giving up and not being actually mean. And I just have to say it, that Doofenshmirtz was a really great father. That that theme like was there, but right now I haven't seen a lot of Bluey, so I cannot talk about that. But any other show, I don't see it. And if you were, let's say, if you were at right now, if you were told that, okay, we want to make a show, anyone you like, what would you be like? What you wanted to do? Is it the same kids show, or you want to make some adult animation? We will
Wow,
talk
that's a
about
good
live
question.
action later.
All right. Good question. Wow. It's funny. Like I've worked in kids TV 30 years, and in my spare time, I don't write kids TV. Sadly, I write adult primetime type sitcoms, spec scripts, and I write feature scripts, everything from rom-coms to creature features to sci-fi. I have sci-fi pilots too, so I have very few preschool level things that I write in my spare time. And there's one show, like I do have a couple dream projects that I've written that I would love to see made. And those are like one is a preschool show that's I love New Orleans and I love Zydeco music and I love all that. I'm a weirdo like that. And this takes place, it's animals in a town a lot like New Orleans in a swamp. And it's a little girl who plays accordion. So it's just, and accordion music is so happy. Like, and there's so many musical styles out of New Orleans. There's funk, there's blues, there's Dixieland, there's jazz. I just feel like it could be a really great, happy, positive show for kids. And the whole point of the show is like she's resilient and doesn't give up. The worst thing that can happen always happens. So she's a delivery driver. So she drives a swamp boat. So she's delivering a cake for a birthday party. Like the swamp snakes will eat her cake, but then she'll figure out it's not the end of the world. I can just bake another cake. So that's my favorite preschool thing I've come up with. And then I have an animated feature that that's called Naughty and Nice. I wrote probably 10 years ago, and it's a holiday feature, and it's gotten some interest from Disney and from some other people. It was on the list to be made at one point, but then their priorities shifted when the industry got worse years ago, a few years ago. So I still look at that and I'm like, this is good. It's rare that I do that with my writing, but whenever I read that, I'm like, this is good and this should be made. So that would be my dream feature to get made. Yeah, and then I do have a spec that's like a sitcom, that's a Simpsons type thing, older animated, which is about like people at commune. Uh,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
it's
That's
fun. So I would love to get some older stuff made, but that's I'm happy to have gotten the work I've gotten. So
okay. Okay. So we'll be running out of time in 9 minutes. So I'm gonna send you after this. So don't worry. I'm gonna send you another one.
that
Just before that, let's just 1 second before I ask you the next question. Nick, let's talk about Simpsons for a second, right? Uh, uh, I loved Simpsons. Let's just get it out of the way. I love Simpsons. I love all the characters, and I, not personally, but I met Maggie Cartwright, the one who voices Bart Simpson. Uh,
Nancy
yes, Nancy. Sorry, Nancy.
Yeah,
And I've met her like at least 5, 6 times when I was working in the school. Uh, but okay, it feels like Simpsons is begging for to end. Because if I watch the new episodes, there's no life in it. I watched couple of like till 10 season 10 I watched it and I was like this is the best thing ever. But after that it seems like it doesn't have that USP if you know what I mean, right? What do you think about that?
right. Well, I haven't watched Simpsons in years, honestly, I must admit. But yeah, it got to the point where they've just done so many episodes. It's just they've done everything already. If you're on a show 2 years, even it's hard to not repeat your ideas. So I honestly don't know how they've lasted so long and continued to, just put out a show in general, really, that is not very repetitive. So and it's brilliant, of course. I love The Simpsons, and it started when I was in college. So I used to sit around with all my college buddies who we were doing our comedy show, and we'd watch The Simpsons. So yeah, but even then, like, and everybody says this, that shows go downhill in quality, but I think it's inevitable. Like with any show, I can't think of a single show except maybe Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I've thought about this a lot, that kind of escalated every season. Most shows have a great first season, a decent second season, and then it's kind of like, we didn't really figure out the rest of the seasons because we didn't know
Yeah.
we get picked up. But again, The Simpsons has gone on what 30 years now, so it's amazing it's done that. And yeah, I met Nancy Cartwright too, actually,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
she was on Rugrats. She played Chucky after the original
Oh,
person.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so she's awesome. They're all so humble, and so down to earth. See, I haven't seen it in years is my short answer, but it's hard to match the first few seasons of any show, really. So
Yeah, but you guys, not you guys, the show always have a team of people, and you still say like after 2 years it gets died down. Is that what I'm hearing? You still don't have anything anymore after that?
notice that like every show I've loved, I think this started maybe in Homeland. Like Homeland season 1 to me is like one of the most intense seasons of a show ever. I was like at the edge of my seat. And honestly, Lost season 1 I thought was brilliant. But then, Lost ended up uh it didn't seem like they knew where they were going
Yeah.
after 7 seasons. And I know people who gave up on it before that and they were right. And Homeland even like it just can't sustain. It's a great show, but it just couldn't sustain such a brilliant season 1. You know what it is.
Mm.
People put so much effort into getting a show made. You have to have a great idea for a season 1 to get it made. You have to,
Mhm.
that's where you put all your effort because that's going to make the show live or die. Like you need a great pilot, you need a great story arc for season 1. You need to set up the characters. It's where all the big things come into focus. And so it makes sense that season 1 is where everybody's focus is and it's got to be brilliant, or it won't last. And I think once a show becomes a hit, it's harder to sustain that because, you can't do an origin of the show every season, it's like you can't put that much effort into it again because you're on a tight schedule now. You got to put out the next season. You know, it's a faster process. And then once it's a hit, people start chiming in with notes, you know? So
Yeah.
you get more notes too.
No, but it's don't you think like it's well, one few of the seasons that I think it's like the How to Get Away with Murder and You. I was literally watching You from Netflix. You, the name is You.
Okay. Right.
That too. But don't you think there's a lot of scrutiny in the beginning as well, but they still pull through, and then afterward they get lazy? Or I don't think they get lazy, but I think there's something that blocks them to do the rest of the episodes.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't even know what it is, but I'm aware of it all the time. Like shows very rarely, honestly, like Buffy is the only show I can think of personally that I know of that like kind of escalated each season. So where she literally saved the world by the end of the last season, you know? She lost her soul, and then she saved the world. There are all kinds of huge, awesome plot arcs going on, you know, Dark River.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know the reason. Maybe they are lazy, maybe it is like, you know, we've got a show now and it's picked up and we don't have to worry as much. I don't know. It's probably a combination of all these things.
No, but with Buffy, it started slow. It didn't started right away with the world saving. So it started slow and then it ended up build it up to that way, if I remember correctly. And one of my favorite episodes of Bucky was the body when she found her. And
Her mom, yeah.
yeah, and Josh is really, really good. Josh Whedon, who wrote the most of the episode, he's really good with character writing, and he did a great job with that. The other one that I think of is like Breaking Bad.
Yeah,
Breaking Bad was good till the end, till the very
that's true.
end. And there was this one more, if I'm not wrong. There was Better Call Saul.
I
It's
haven't
good.
seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been going good. I haven't seen Stranger Things last season yet, so I cannot say that, but that
It was good.
yes.
Yeah, Stranger Things is good all the way through. Like it's the first season was great. And actually I like the last season aside was my second favorite season aside from the first season. But again, it's hard to match that first season on Stranger Things too. And I love Breaking Bad too, and you're right. That is one that stays good all the way through, but it's more Shakespearean. And it's funny, I've talked
Mm.
with a lot of people about this because Walter White learns early on, like the first season, probably or second, there's moments where he can stop. Literally, like he's made enough money, he's gonna be fine to get through his treatments until he dies, you know, but he doesn't, you know. And that's the very Shakespearean thing, like where character dictates action and dictates your fate, you know, like he's just a bad guy at heart and always has been. That's what we learn about Walter White, you know.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
that's sad. Yeah.
yeah. One of my one of the teachers, the lecturers told that this is the Breaking Bad is like classic Greek tragedy. His hubris just didn't let him to end, and at the end, it cost him his life. So that was really fun, and I think that's what he had with the beginning. The creator, I think that has it with the beginning,
Yeah.
and also one show which is highly underrated, but I loved it so much is Mr. Robot. Have you seen that?
Oh, I haven't seen it. My son loves that show though. Yeah.
Oh, I bet why because it's similar to a Greek tragedy, but it's I don't know. It's I call it the best ripoff ever. So it takes a lot of elements from Fight Club, American Psycho, and other great movies which are basically anti-establishment, and it just makes it their own. I don't know how they do that, but that's one of the best things ever I've seen. So that's a recommendation if you want one.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, and also, what about the one thing that I kind of liked is that have you think about making a limited series like which happens in HBO a lot, like the Chernobyl and the other limited series? Have you?
Yeah, I think we're gonna run out of time soon, but like I haven't really written one. I would love to, but like it's out of my wheelhouse as far as stuff I get paid for. But I like watching those. Yeah.
Okay. But
Yeah.
if we okay, so when we were talking about your dream project, so the live action kind that you're looking for, like the sci-fi and the creature features, have you tried with those or no? Or was it in your diary all the time?
Yeah, I've had a couple different agents and they've sent them out a little bit. Just haven't gotten any solid leads on those. Um, and I have uh
Okay, so since we were talking about dream projects, so what live action dream projects you have? Like you would like, okay, I really want to make this.
good one. I love westerns. And I love creature features. I grew up in Arizona, so I've always loved westerns for some reason. It's in my blood, I guess. So I have a western that's a creature feature with a cowboy and a Native American who team up to fight a Wendigo, which is essentially the Native American version of a werewolf. Um, it might have actually been like what they patterned werewolves after. So I would love to make that. That would be super cool to make. It's very like Robert Rodriguez, you know, I could see that kind of tone to it.
Oh, okay, okay. A little bit over the top.
Yeah, it could be over the top.
Oh, what's your approach? Is it somewhat like I don't know how to say it, a little bit campy, or do you want it to be like self-serious and whatnot?
A little bit of both. I mean, the action can be somewhat campy, but there's like some serious storylines in it too, you know. So I guess, you know, Tarantino does that a lot too. You can have kind of really exaggerated action stuff, but still feel for the characters. So it's kind of in that realm. And then I have some live action sitcoms that I would love to do. Well, I also have another live action movie, come to think of it. Like if I won the lottery tomorrow, I'd fund like three of my movies.
Okay.
And the other one would be aside from my animated holiday feature and the creature feature, there's one called Again that's it's supernatural, but it's also like spiritual almost. It's about a little girl who's remembers a past life where she was killed, and she tracks down her killer in the present day. He's still killing people, so he's a serial killer. So
Oh, okay. So it's also a thriller in some sense.
yeah, I should copyright that now. You know, steal that watching. It's,
Okay, okay. They might, so please do that. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other stuff apart from the writing, since we already brought up copyright, and um we'll talk about the financials later. For if anyone new who's just like a freshman and just wanted to write stuff in general, not what you specialize in, what would be your advice?
I mean, you know, write what you know is true. It's a cliche, but it's true. You know, like you can get the best depth of feeling from stories that somehow relate to your own life. You know, that said, you can set it in space, you know, you can do whatever, but as long as, you know, for me, the most important thing about a story is that you have to have someone to root for. So that's my piece of advice. And I heard Vince Gilligan, the creator of Breaking Bad, say this too. Like, more and more, there's villains in the real world that are doing horrible things. And we need people that are just day to day everyman heroes to look up to. So that's the kind of story I'm intrigued by. And you know, it's how Walter White starts. He starts as an everyman who's doing something bad for a good reason, but he ends up, you know, going to the dark side.
Mhm.
So I would say have a character, you know, write what you know, write the kind of story that you love the most. Like think big at the start, like whatever you want to do the most, whatever kind of thing you want to write the most, write that as a sample and write two samples, ideally, because once someone reads one sample and they like it, they're going to be like, oh, this is great. What else do you have? That happened to me years ago. I won Scriptapalooza with a sitcom spec, A Malcolm in the Middle, and I got to meet with Steve Levitan, who created Modern Family, and he was awesome. Like he sat with me and he asked me about the Rugrats writing process, but even after I won Scriptapalooza, he was like, "What other script do you have?"
Mhm.
So I thankfully I had another sitcom. I had a friend spec. So I have two great samples in the genre that you want to write for the most, because you will get stereotyped. Like this is my other piece of advice, which is sad but true. For the most part, whatever form of writing you get your first credits in, that's what people will see you as. You know, like for me, it's a kids TV writer. You know, I can only write preschool at this point. Like, which is not true. I have credits in all age ranges and live action, but like for the most part, executives don't want to lose their jobs. So when someone's like, why did you hire that guy? They have to be like, well, he had written 57 preschool scripts, you know? So
Mm.
no one can blame them. So yeah, so that's kind of like make sure your samples are what you love, and again, like the stories I love are stories that have someone you can root for, you know? And I'm sure you've heard this, like the basis of script writing is take a nice guy essentially or someone you care about and throw rocks at them and make them climb up a tree and then the whole rest is like how do they get out of the tree and stop people throwing rocks at them, you know?
Yeah.
That's essentially it. And you know, just foster connections. Again, my one of my friends in high school ended up with an agent who got me in the door at Rugrats. So you just never know where it's going to come from, and it's a lot easier these days with like LinkedIn and all the social media stuff to just reach out to people. Like I have people reach out to me every week, at least if not every day. Well, it's not every day, but every week, just looking for advice, you know, and to break into the business. And I've done that too. And for the most part, I don't think I've ever met someone who's like, no, I don't want you to be interested in me. You know, it's like
Yeah.
people are happy to talk about their experience with people who are interested. So yeah, you know, reach out, and that's easier than ever now in the era of social media. So
Mm. Networking is kind of interesting because in my experience, you have to reach out to like 20 people to get one reply if you're reaching through online. So I think mine would be to just it's a numbers game, as you always say about other things. So that's two. And okay, so one question that I always had, and it's kind of weird, but it's like, does anyone care about your spelling errors or the empty space that we people a lot of talk about in the script, or they genuinely read it, or sometimes they don't even care what you write?
no, they care. Yeah, I would
Okay,
say.
okay.
Yeah, because well, first of all, they get so many scripts, the gatekeepers, you know, that they're just looking for any reason to throw anything out, honestly. And I would be too, you know, like if I have 50 scripts on my desk that I have to finish over the weekend, the first one I pick up has a spelling error on page one, I'd be like, I'm done. You know, like
Mm.
so yeah, you really do need to take the time and attention to detail to make your script perfect, you know, like as much as you can in every way. And because that stuff is something that people look for still. And it's also true that, you know, there's a lot of screenwriting classes, and I believe this is say you got to set up all the major elements of your story in the first 10 pages. See all your major characters, get the conflict out, meet the villain. And I think that's true, honestly. I think, um, and that's just good storytelling. You want to get the story going, you want to jump into the action. Like, I don't think they do this in limited series. Like you said, limited series seem designed to like stretch things out and make things so boring because they're filling 8 episodes now. So I think some of them are terrible about pacing. But yeah, for a script reader, you want to grab them in the first 10 pages, you know? So
Okay. So okay, let's just ask how how we can grab it at first 10 pages. Like if
nope.
my story has a twist and it is a thriller, I cannot reveal who's the killer in the first 10 pages. You know what I mean?
Right. No, it's a good question. I wish I knew the answer because I'd be a billionaire screenwriter.
Okay.
But I can tell you what I did. Like in this the story I mentioned, not to say I'm a great example, but that just popped into my head. Like, um, the screenplay I wrote about the little girl who remembers a past life. Like I opened that with her at school, and she stops. She's walking into school, and she stops and she looks at a plane going overhead, and she just freezes in terror. So you're like, what's going on here? This is weird. And then she goes into the class, and a little kid at lunch is choking, and she takes a juice box straw and jabs it into his throat, and they think she's killing him. But it turns out, you know, in a past life, she was a nurse, and the person who killed her was a pilot of a private plane. So, like,
Oh, okay.
you want to make this is another thing that I've read a lot too, and it's true. Like, you want to lay in these little mysteries that get the audience interested. Like, what's going on there? You know, so in my screenplay, you don't know how she saved that kid until, you know, it's probably 10 pages later. It's probably past the first 10 pages, but you're like, how did she know that? You know, and so it makes you interested in what comes next, you know? Um, so yeah, layer in some mystery too whenever possible. And a lot of times that's character based, you know, little things to keep the audience on the edge of their seat and guessing and interested. So combined with like a fun world, you know? So, yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
easier said than done.
yeah, yeah. So it's like I guess that's why a lot of TV shows and a lot of movies, they show a scene of a climax at the first and then the credits roll and then you start seeing that. So maybe that's the reason that I,
Mm.
at least that I'm correlating between the two. So
Well,
okay. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. And that's tough. That's a toughie. Yeah. That's a tough thing to do. Like just give keep them engaged, all engaged in first 10 pages so that they flip over more and read the whole thing. You know what I mean? And obviously, when you do rewrites, what's the process there? So when they say like, okay, this joke, no, nada, give something else, and you'd be like, I don't have anything else. But then you just, I don't know how you guys go through that.
I drink a lot. My son bottle of whiskey right by my computer. Yeah, rewrite, notes are the best and the worst because they often make things better. But like, yeah, and when you're done, you're like, this is perfect and this is my baby. And then there's people are like, this is wrong and this is wrong and this is wrong. And oftentimes they have good points. So yeah, there's really no easy way to deal with notes. I mean, you just bang your head against the computer and you just sit down and you do it. Like if it's a note, and there's different kind of notes, like you can get a note from an exec that's not exactly, it's kind of vague, but then you kind of dig in and ask some questions to say, get to the root of what's really bothering them. And other times there are notes that are bad. I will push back on a bad note unless it's very minor, like I will gently push back. It's rare, but it happens where someone just doesn't get it and they give a note that makes something worse. Or, this is like, I think Alfred Hitchcock did this. Like, you can get a bad note and just ignore it and see if they bring it up again. And I've done that several times too.
Okay.
So, but notes in general is just like the process. You just have to sit and go through it. And what I do to make it easier is I go through the easiest notes first. I put all the notes in a separate document, and the ones that are easiest I do first. I just delete them so it looks like less notes. And this makes me feel like I'm accomplishing something. So I could get through, the majority of the notes, say on an 11-minute script, which is what kids TV usually is. It's saying like an hour. And then it's those hard ones at the end that just take some thinking power, maybe. So
Okay.
yeah.
So okay, let me just ask, who's the worst people who is like, okay, I think if that notes come from this individual or this position, it's most likely going to be a battle.
Well, I can't name names.
Okay. Not individuals.
Yeah, I will say, should I say this? This is the controversial part. Most people in the business know this. Like,
Mm.
Disney can be tough because
Oh,
they
okay.
they know they're Disney and they know they're a legacy and they're pretty much, a lot of times they have great notes, but it's very hard to change Disney's mind per se, just because in general, like there's varying levels of people there and all that, but Disney has the whole legacy and they're Disney and, like kind of what they say goes and they're kind of used to that. So it's kind of hard with really big, and obviously Disney is amazing. So, but companies like that tend to know it too. So, which is fine. But yeah, it does make it a little harder to uh change a note or argue a note or whatever. So, um, but that said, it's because they care about it so much and because it's such a big company. I find that the bigger the company, generally the more notes you get. Although I've worked with some people too that at little companies that just will dig in and won't change their mind, and that's fine. At that point, as the writer, you've got to weigh it. Is this worth losing my job over? If you don't want to take this note, or is this worse? Is this worth jeopardizing a future relationship with this person? So for the most part, like I do try to let the story dictate. Like if it's going to make the story worse, I will at least mention that. And then if someone continues to give me the note that will make the story worse, I just, there's not much you can do. So if they're above you in the chain, so
No, so
but
you bit your tongue, bit bite your tongue and just let it and write.
Yeah, and in general, I mean, it's kids television mostly, so it's not like the end of the world either. So this is all like very first world problems, and it's very rare, honestly. This level of a note where I would fight it, it's very rare, which is good. So yeah, especially in kids TV, like more so than in sitcoms. I've heard a lot of horror stories about sitcoms, like people at all levels of kids TV, from the studios to the freelance writers, are just good people, honestly, that are collaborative and open-minded for the most part. So it's a nice area of entertainment to be in. Yeah.
Okay. Any good notes? Like, some people like, okay, they if they say something, that means okay, I should work on this.
Yes. I mean, I have my favorite bosses and favorite execs who really know story, and a lot of those people are writers themselves, you
Oh,
know.
okay.
Yeah, and that really makes a difference, honestly. So my favorite execs are all writers themselves. Uh so yeah, I love that. I had something else to say. What was it?
You can name them because you're saying good things.
Well, that's true. Well, uh the Spin Master is the Paw Patrol folks, and I had an exec there. He's not there anymore, but a guy named Jonas Stroh, who I still deal with like pretty much daily. We're working on stuff. But when I first started at Spin Master, I thought it was just a toy company, and I was really worried they wouldn't get story. But Jonah knows story really well. He's developed tons of his own series now. He's gotten credits on several scripts, so that's great, and he really understands the process. And that's when you really, it's great to do all levels. Like I love execs who have also written, because they understand how hard it is when they just say, let's make the middle a little more interesting, or let's add 20% more comedy here. Like these are really hard things to do. Like, so so yeah, they're my favorite kind of execs, the ones that have kind of worked their way up and kind of know writing from doing it firsthand. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Plus, also, how much the time constraint? Well, it is a stressor, obviously, because if you make me want to say I have to write something in 7 days, yeah, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna be nice. So, how do you deal with that? Because it's a creative process, or you just get used to it.
You just get used to it. Yeah, like most shows, if they're I've run writing for shows. I've been like the head writer or the story editor on several shows. And ideally, what you want to do is, if you have a new writer, a writer who's new to the show, you want to give them 2 weeks to do a first draft. That's fair. Like a writer who's done it before and knows the show, a week. Um, and I'm talking like an 11-minute episode, which is about anywhere from like 12 to 18 pages. Um, so in general, you learn like there's certain time periods that someone who's experienced can do something in. So like again, if it's a new writer or if they're just new to the show, like 2 weeks for first draft is a good guide. If they've done the show before, 1 week. Um, Outlines should take no more than 5 days. Outlines are like 4 or 5 page documents that kind of list all the beats. You probably know. And and then you get it to a second draft, and if there's a lot of not a lot of notes on a second draft, 5 days at most, unless they have other things going on. So, and when I run a show, I always try to talk to a writer and say, hey, if you have other deadlines, let me know. Are you going on vacation? So, there's a little wiggle room in the schedule, which is nice usually. So, but yeah, you do have to learn how to meet deadlines, as part of the business. That's a definite big part of it. So.
So apart from writing the outline, is there any shortcuts that you have acquired during your whole tenure?
Shortcuts? Like, um, to like making the script writing process go faster, kind of.
Uh, anything that any I guess the shortcut was the wrong word. Any tools or any method, any tips that would for a new writer would be like, okay, I can use that and make my process a little bit faster.
Right. Honestly, like I'm I'm kind of known among my friends for coming up with a lot of ideas for shows. Like when I pitched to Rugrats, I had 40 ideas. and I know a couple other writers like this. So, and the way to do that, honestly, is to sit with the Bible, like get the show Bible and just read it multiple times. This is what I do. I go through it, and every piece of character thing they say, like this is not something I did, but in say in the Rugrats Bible, it said Chucky's scared of clowns. I don't know what it said. I don't remember, but you're like, oh yes, if no one has written a clown story, I'm going to write a clown story, so.
Yeah.
So you pick these things out of the Bible, and that way it's very much based on character too. So that's what I will do. I will read a Bible once. I will make notes as I read it, like this is a good idea. And sometimes in a Bible, literally there'll be an example story and no one's written it yet. So really treat the Bible as like holy and go through it and mine every little character piece you can for a story. So that would be my tip. And I've done that with all the shows I've worked on, and it's worked well for me. Like, so
Okay, so that would be to in short of it, like know your show and know your characters in your blood, basically, to
yeah,
get it faster.
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good advice. Thank you. Thank you. And I hope our listeners will be happy to hear that. And okay, let's talk about the biggest issue that we had for last couple of years, money. Let's talk about that.
I don't have any.
Yeah, you're right, or you won't. I'll be surprised if you had any. But yeah, if we think about that, a lot of people who are discouraged for taking this as a full-time career, the number one reason I hear is the money. So, as someone as you who did it for such a long time, I'm not sure if you had that much competition. And uh, I know you didn't go into the industry to be the next billionaire, obviously, but uh, what would be the process? I don't even know what I'm asking here, to be
Sure.
honest.
No, I can talk a little about money stuff. Yeah, I mean, right now I will start out by saying, and I think you know this, and most of the people listening would probably know this, that we're in a really rough time in the industry. Right? Um, uh, there's a lot of fragmentation in viewership. Like YouTube has become the prime thing for people to mine to write shows, and the main issue, there's a lot of issues, but as far as writing and salaries, like the main issue is even, let's say 3 years ago, most shows were network television, and the streamers changed this too. So let's go back 5 years. Like network television used to have, a show would have 26 episodes a year. If it were half-hour episodes, it would have 52 episodes a year if they were 11-minute episodes. And that would take a writing staff about a year and a half to do, unless they were really rushed. Like you could do it quicker, but a year and a half is a good level of time. So you knew you had a guaranteed job and a guaranteed network level salary for a year to a year and a half. Now networks have died. Streamers have come along. Hardly anybody is watching the networks anymore. They're cutting. They just had another round of layoffs and a couple big networks a couple weeks ago, which is really sad. So now the short form stuff is what kids watch. They watch YouTube. And the problem with YouTube is they're shorts. Like it's not as long as network television is. Like network TV would be 11 minutes at least for a kid show, sometimes 22. Like Phineas and Ferb's were 22s, I believe. Now you're talking 3 minutes, you're talking 1 minute, you're talking 7 minutes for a show episode. You're talking episode orders thanks to streaming. Streaming started lowering episode orders. So I worked on the first show for the Spin Master folks that went to Netflix and not Nickelodeon, and they were all excited. It was called Mighty Express. It was a train show, and I was like, no, this is a bad thing, because I'd worked for Netflix before, and we produced about 60 episodes of that show, which in a normal network order would be slightly over a year. Then last a year is all. But Netflix took 60 episodes, broke them up into sets of 10, and made that like 5 seasons that spaced out over like 3 or 4 years. So that's the problem. Yeah, like it's less work over over a longer period of time that pays less. And YouTube also pays, in my experience, in podcasting too. Podcasting's great, but it pays about half of what network television pays. So it's very hard for someone like me who's been around years and has used a certain level of income, it's very hard for me to look at YouTube and podcasting and think I can continue making the same level of living doing that, because I'd have to write double the amount of episodes. For someone starting out, they would be more used to these levels of income, I think, that a podcast would provide, or YouTube. So yeah, that's the bad news. The good news about now is there's more outlets, but the bad news is they often pay less than, say, network TV did, and they don't last as long. Like a show will have, say, 10 episodes and you'll be done in 6 months, and then you got to move on to another show with 10 episodes. Whereas before, one show, like I said, would have 52 episodes, and that would last at least a year and a half.
Okay, so you have to be in a constant lookout for jobs, and
Yeah.
which is obviously stressful, and which obviously doesn't help with the creative process. And okay, so anyone, I think I already asked this before, but I'm gonna ask again. So right now, with the current market, and someone who's as young as that can be, as novice as that can be, so your suggestion would be to have another source of income too, or no?
Yeah, definitely. I'm even starting to look into that again. So yeah, definitely another source of income is always a great idea. I moved here and I didn't get full-time writing work from the time I moved to LA for 4 years, almost 5 years. So, and in that time I was a video editor and I did audio visual work too. So yeah, have a backup career for sure. And the other thing that's the good thing now about like YouTube and TikTok and all these creator um based mediums is that you can write your own show. You can write and produce your own show. And you don't have to wait for anybody else. And I know it's easier said than done again, but I know a lot of people who are doing that. They're self-financing pilots, and I know one of the voice actresses on Rugrats actually just self-financed through Kickstarter. I think it's 8 episodes of a live action video series of shorts. So um more than ever, like, it's the age of making your own stuff and getting your own work out there any way you can. And then, people still pick that up. Like I know Coco Melon, I had lunch with an executive a couple weeks ago, and he was telling me they just go through YouTube and they'll buy any little channel sometimes that just looks promising in the case it'll break out. So they'll buy something with like 50 viewers or whatever, just in case it blows up. And a lot of those little shows become, the shows that are huge now started out really small. So that's the good news. Like, anybody can still hit the lottery theoretically, but and you don't have to sit around. Even if you have a day job doing nothing, you can make your own videos, and that's what I would suggest doing, and that's what I hear from everybody in the industry too, is like, it's the age of getting your own stuff out there, as much as you can. So,
Yeah,
and I've tried,
yeah. Please continue.
I've tried with it myself. I'm just like old as behind the curve on all the production stuff, but like, I have a bunch of sketches and stuff I'd love to film. So, it's just fun to see your stuff produced too. And the good thing about it is you don't get any notes,
Yes, yes. That's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
But yeah. We'll talk about this after we shoot this in this podcast about producing your own sketches, because I'm shooting something in 29 too. Obviously, it's shoestring, but yeah, we'll talk about it later. Uh, so okay, so that's the official side of things. Let's get a little bit creative. So okay, apart from Looney Tunes, what show you wanted to be a part of? Any show, any in the entire history of
Wow.
shows.
So many choices.
Yeah.
My favorite show is, I don't watch it regularly anymore, but growing up, I watched all the sitcoms. Like, I was a latchkey kid at home. I watched every single sitcom you can imagine. Like, name one and I watched it, but it was mostly like I Dream of Jeannie, Dick Van Dyke, I Love Lucy, Bewitched, Gomer Pyle, F Troop. I watched them all, but my favorite show was Dick Van Dyke.
Okay.
So I would love to be on the writing staff of Dick Van Dyke. I love it's about television writers, so and
Mm.
B, you got Carl Reiner, you got Dick Van Dyke, you got Mary Tyler Moore, such an amazing cast. So yeah, I would love to write for Dick Van Dyke.
Okay, one genre that you always wanted to write, and you would be like, okay, I'll make the next movie on that, even though it's diametrically opposite to yours.
That's interesting. Well, I already mentioned the horror stuff,
Yeah.
but I will say it's not totally opposed to mine, but I love historical stuff. Like I'm watching John Adams, the miniseries again, and I'm kind of fascinated with the colonial period of America. So I would love to make like a colonial miniseries, honestly, like a period piece. So
Okay. What's your biggest pet peeves when it comes to if you have to read a script and you be like, obviously we talked about the smallest spelling errors and everything, but what's your biggest peeve of or a cop out in a script?
it's a good question.
I'm making you think.
Yeah, this is a thinker. uh, well, I don't know. You may have stumped me. I'm lucky in that I usually read good script. Oh no, here's what it is. Okay. I hate lines that are just very generic. Like there's no surer sign to me of someone who is starting out than a line that's generic. So, instead of having a character, like if a character just says, yeah, hey, do you want to go to the party? Yeah. No, there's no character in that. It's like every line should count. And you want the attitude of the character to shine through ideally in every line. So instead of, do you want to go to a party? I'd be like, well, maybe, and then you see that there's something holding them back, and then you get into that, like, what's wrong, or even if it's a yes, like, yes, it's gonna be the best party ever, dude, woohoo, like some sort of something going on inside their head, that some sort of emotion, so that's my biggest pet peeve. I don't see it much, but like generic lines bug me. So
Okay. So you want like every real estate of the script to be serving the characters of the story, if I'm hearing it right.
that's a high standard.
Yeah, like you want like the only script that I think has that in spades is like the Naked Gun series. It
Yeah,
has joke on each and every line. I don't know why and how they got it, but that's a really and Airplane also.
yeah,
They have jokes in every line, and I love that movie. I don't know what were they gonna do with the new ones.
I love those guys.
I don't know, but what do you think about the new wave of comedy and other movies in general and TV shows? We already talked about the kids shows, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, to jump back to the specific lines thing, the other show that it doesn't have to be funny, but as long as it's like, ideally, you don't want a line to go into any character's mouth. Like in Friends was probably the best about this. Like you couldn't put a Phoebe line in Joey's mouth, like you have such distinct characters, like, and that's the gold standard in a script. It's very hard to find, but that's what I'm talking about too. But like current shows that I like, I don't know, is that where?
No, it's more about it's the current trend, what you like about it and what you hate about it. One thing that I hate about it is a lot of big budgeted movies. They are just products at this point, and I don't like it at all. There's no passion in most of the big movies. There are some, like there's like Dune 2, which has a lot of passion in it, and there are some other big budget movies, but a lot of movies are feel like um they're just there to sell tickets. Well, which everyone is. And
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. Like, I don't, I am a Marvel fan, but like at some point you start to hit the point where you've had enough Marvel. Like
yeah,
the problem now, like as I'm sure you've heard, is that no one wants to do original IP. Everybody is so scared of losing their job that they're just approving things that already have a built-in viewership or readership. And I get it. It's a tough time right now, but but that stunts creativity, and that makes it very hard. Like I know Disney animation preschool side is mostly all legacy stuff right now. They're doing,
Mm.
reboots of previous shows, spin-offs of shows. So it's just it's very hard to get an original idea made even in preschool television right now. So that bugs me. And then I'm not a fan of the short form stuff, I will say. I appreciate it, but like I'm not necessarily sure it's a good idea to have 1 minute shorts be expanded into the next big TV series or movies we see. It probably remains to be seen how fruitful it is, but I think you want a good, fully formed idea going in that can sustain itself over a season or over a whole screenplay, and then you want a really good idea to begin with. That's my theory. So
Okay. Even the new ideas take a good chunk of time to get made, but yeah, well, it's most of it is luck. So, okay, we're wrapping up soon. Any last sentence or anything what you want to say to the listeners? They can be anyone, someone who likes stories, someone who wants to be a writer, actor, director, anything you want to share, some of your wisdom at the end.
right. Oh, the pressure's on. Inspire someone.
Please
Well,
do.
I mean, I got into it for the love of it, and I think you probably love it too. And there's those of us that just love story and talking about story, and I've always been like that for some reason, like I could analyze stories in grade school, and I think a lot of people have this capacity. Actually, I've talked with several people that aren't in entertainment that can really deeply analyze entertainment stuff, which is really cool. But what makes writers different, I think, is that they sit down and do the work, and the work is, for the most part, lonely and hard. Um, you sit at a bright blank screen, but like the moments of inspiration, and I'm sure anybody who's had this will tell you, like, make it all worth it. Like when you get in that flow and you're just like enjoying the writing, there's nothing like it. So like I would say, to get into entertainment, just have a love for it. Have a love for the written word, have a love for TV if you want to be a TV writer, like I think that's really the key, because that's what the best people in this business, like even Steven Spielberg. Spielberg is amazing because he's like an encyclopedia of film. Like you get him talking about film. I've seen interviews. He'll just talk nonstop about all these obscure movies going back to, like the 1800s or whatever, the very first movie. So you can feel the love. And that's why he's Steven Spielberg, like, because he just loves this and he's good at it. So, and again, give yourself some time. Like it took me 5 years to break in. Don't be too hard on yourself. And, yeah, just enjoy the process, I guess too. So
Yeah, that's solid advice. And it was really nice to have you, sir. And
yeah, that's
please,
fine.
and I will drop your Instagram. And I'm not sure if you have a YouTube channel or no.
I don't. No,
Okay, cool. So no competition for me. And I'll also drop your LinkedIn. So if you can text me those, it would be great.
sure.
And right now, technically, the podcast has ended. So just before we leave, we barely have a minute. I just want to let you know, if you want to make your sketches, I can make those. I have a couple of actor friends, and one of them has camera as well. He's a camera operator. So I don't think it will take like a huge production or anything. So if that's the case, we can shoot it for you. And if you're interested in that, please let me know. We are free we can schedule all of it in. So it's up to you.
Okay, that's great to know. I think I'll look through and see what I have that might fit. So thank you. Yeah.
Yes, please do. We love shooting things. I want to make I start to earn from my YouTube channel and then pay people and then grow. You know what I mean? So hopefully that works. So that was nice having you. And let's see. I think it's less than 30 seconds.
This was great. Yeah. Thanks.
was great.
10. So yeah.
Thank you. I have a shit ton of more. I think I will ask you in a later.